All right, let's take a first look at Adobe Illustrator CC. In this section, we're going to create a typography poster using the quote, "A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor." And you can see I've got a couple variations here of the same quote using similar graphics, but to different results. And we're going to walk through making multiple versions and how to export them. So when it's all said and done, you'll have your very own typography poster. You're welcome to follow along using the assets I've provided, or you can create your own with your own quote if you want. So let's dive in. I'm going to go ahead and close this window to get back to my start screen. I'm going to come down to presets and create a new document from a letter-sized preset. So now that this is open, one other thing I'm going to do, by default I'm seeing my Essentials workspace, but I'm going to hit Reset Essentials. There's a good chance your screen looks something like this. So real quick, down the left-hand side we have all of our tools that we could be working with, from type tools to warp tools, eyedropper tools, shape tools. So feel free to poke around here. And then of course, any of these tools that have a little arrow on the bottom right, if you click and hold, that means that there's more tools hidden behind there. Depending on the tool you have selected, your options bar will change across the top. I'd call it the HUD or the heads-up display, but technically it's called the options bar. And then on the right hand side are various windows that will modify whatever you're working with. There's also library assets and different layers. We can also add even more windows if we come down to the Windows panel. There's things like alignment, appearance, artboards, brushes, all kinds of stuff. So usually if you don't see it on the sidebar, you'll find it under this Windows tab. So now that we're set there, what I'll go ahead and do, on this top right there's this tiny little double arrow expand panels button. I'll click on that, and now I have a better idea of what panels are actually open. Now you might already know what you want to use, and if I can put that back and shut that, you can see that we've got the shortcuts, and that's nice too if you want to keep your artboard minimal and just focus on the artwork. Either way is great, but just know that that's there. Now the other thing I want to talk to you about real quick is shortcuts that I'll be using as I walk through, because as we get going I want to speed things up quite a bit. I don't want you to have to sit here and listen to me talk. So what I do a lot of times, we have the move tool, the selection tool, and basically what that does, if we have objects on our canvas, any kind of shape, if I have the move tool or hit the letter V, I can move that around. So if I have multiple objects here, basically I just click and drag, no big deal, right? I can drag and select multiple shapes. Okay, that's the move tool. Actually, technically in Illustrator it's called the selection tool. It's recently been changed to the move tool if you're in Photoshop. So now that we've got that out of the way, the other thing I use a lot is the space bar, and the space bar is a shortcut to get the hand tool. Now I could just hit the letter H to get my hand tool, but then I'm stuck using it. Let's say I was on the type tool, letter T, and I want to just move things real quick just to see more of my canvas. Well, I can hold down the space bar, move a little bit, and then let go of the space bar, and I'm back to the previous tool I was using. So I use that one a lot too. The other shortcut I use frequently is while holding down the space bar, I'll hold down the command key as well, or if you're on a PC, hold down that control key, and it turns into your zoom tool. And again, I could have just hit the zoom or the Z for the zoom tool, but it's faster as I'm working to just hit these modifier keys in time. So I've got the type tool, I'll hit space bar to get my move tool. Now I'll hold down command with that space bar to zoom in a little bit, look at some details, make sure it's what I want, and then I can add the alt key to that to zoom back out. So now I've got spacebar, command, and alt. Okay, so I'm going to zoom through this as fast as I can. The other shortcut that's really handy, if I've got my type tool, I can just hold down just the command key, and that'll default to my selection tool. And then as soon as I let go of the command key, it comes back to whatever previous tool I had selected. So that's the way we're going to be working through a lot of these things, just so you know what's going on. All right, what I'm going to do is come up here to View. I'm going to come back and fit Artboard to Window, Command 0, to bring that up full size so I can see the entire artboard as big as I can without getting cropped off. All right, let's go ahead and save our progress here, which really all we've done is created a new document and talked about shortcuts. But let's go ahead and save this, and in the next lesson we're going to learn about working with fonts and typography. All right, if we're going to make a typography poster, it's about time to learn how to bring in our text. So what I want you to do is copy that quote you have wherever you have it, or get ready to type it out. Hit the letter T to get your type tool, and I already have my quote copied to my clipboard, so I'm just going to click once, hit Command V to paste that in there, and you'll see it drops it in a straight line. Now if this was a long text, let's say a whole paragraph, because I just clicked once, it would just put it in one long line. Now with my type tool selected, I could also click and drag, which will create a text box that will contain my text. Now if I hit Command V to paste, you'll see it contains it within that box. So now that we know how to bring in the text, let's learn how to modify it. So what I want you to do is go ahead and Command click, and with that text selected, my options bar will change to reflect the options that my type tool has. Even if, let's say I click on the move tool or the selection tool, if I click away and now truly it is my selection tool and my options bar changes, but by clicking on that line of text, my options change to what the text tool has. So I can click on this drop down menu at the top and I can see all kinds of fonts from my entire font library. These are all the fonts that are on my system currently that I have available. And if you find one you like, you can see the preview here on the side. You can just click on it and it'll change your font to be whatever that is. Now once you get a font you like, you can come in here to the character window, click on that, and I can further refine options like the size of the font. I can bring that up a little bit. The leading, and what the leading is, it's the space between the lines. This isn't going to be a good sample on this one because it's not in 2 lines, but this one, however, if I click once on that, come back over to my character window, and I change that leading, if I bring it down, it gets smaller. The reason why they called it leading is back in the day when they used to set type by hand, they would put physical pieces of lead between the types of between the rows of text. So that's what that is. It's not leading, it's leading. And then we have our kerning, the space between 2 characters and how that behaves. And then we also have our tracking, which is when you track out every character. So for example, as I bring this up, let's just jump to a bigger number, you can see that it spaces out those letters. So we can come in here and we can refine things. And if you decide that you don't want to have to try and figure out the distances you're wanting to do here, you can use the touch type tool. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to click once, use that shortcut space command, and then click to bring it in a little bit closer. I'm going to click once on my text again, come back up here and choose the touch type tool. And now I can click once on any letter I want to mess with, and then I can drag it to modify the space. Or I can even scale it up. I can hover on this tab on the top and rotate it. So there's a lot of things I can do. The benefit of working this way is it keeps my text editable. So now if I wanted to, I could just command click off to the side, get my text tool selected here with the letter T and highlight that S, and I could change it to anything I wanted, whether it was a lowercase letter or back to that capital or maybe a different letter altogether. It's nice to keep that editable. So that's one way to work. And let's say you're playing with this and you just don't see the right font you want to use. So what we can do is with the Adobe Creative Suite subscription, you have access to the Adobe fonts from Typekit. So with my font selected here, I can jump over to the add fonts from Typekit, or actually you don't even have to be in there. Let's say you're just in your project. We can come up here to type, add fonts from Typekit. That's another way to get there. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up the Typekit library. And once you're in there, you can refine your selections further. So let's go ahead and pick a sans serif font. And maybe I will choose, now here's one thing too, I want to keep the ones that I can sync. If it's just the web-based version, that's if you want to embed it on a website, but not all web fonts are available for your desktop. So since I'm showing you on my desktop how to design with typography, we're going to leave the sync option selected so it just shows us the fonts I can actually sync up with. Let's find some headings fonts. These are fonts that might be a little more stylistic and not as good for a paragraph. In this case, it'll work out great for our quote. I want the weight to be a little bit heavier, and maybe choose a more condensed font. So now with these font options selected, I can kind of scroll through and see if any of these stick out that I want to use on the project. So how about this one, Abolition Soft. So I'll go ahead and use this font. I'll click on that. And it gives me the option to select different font families. So the characters here, we've got regular and oblique families we can choose from. I'll leave those both selected. Oblique is another word for italic. So I'll click on Sync Selected Fonts, and what it's going to do is immediately sync this to my Creative Cloud library. I can just X out of that now and jump back over into Illustrator, and you'll see I get my notification up here. 2 fonts were added, and I can immediately apply that. So I don't have to quit Illustrator and open it back up. I can click once up on here to apply to this font, search for it, Abolition Soft. I'll click once on that, and now that font has been applied. So you can see it's a lot quicker than it used to be. If you have any experience in the past with some of the older versions of Illustrator, which you probably don't or you wouldn't be in this class, but if you did, you used to have to close out of your app and then reopen it to load, but not anymore. So that's a great way to add new fonts to your system. So now that we've done that, now we can fine-tune our fonts a little bit further. So we can click on here and click on the drop down of this character menu to make changes here. We can click on the paragraph setting if we don't want it to hyphenate, or if we want to modify, the layout of your font, whether it's left justified, center, right. Okay, so we can play with those options as well. The other thing that I like to do is I use shortcuts a lot. So instead of even coming up to those menus, what I can do is hit Command, Shift, and the period key, or the greater than, and you can see that I can make my font much bigger or smaller without even having to take my hands over to the mouse to find it in the menu. So that's Command Shift, comma, to make it smaller, or Command Shift period to make it bigger. Now as I make it bigger, you'll notice that leading gets stacked on top of itself. So now I'll hit Command, Option, and the down arrow key to make my leading bigger, or Command, Option, and the up arrow key to bring it back in. So this is the way I work a lot of times when I'm trying to quickly blitz through my font and get it kind of close to the size I want. And once I get this set where I want, see, we're in this text box now, so the problem is as I make this bigger, it's going to start jumping to the lines it needs. But let's say I got this exactly how I wanted it in 2 lines. I could just click once on this, and if I start to click and drag, what's going to happen is it's just going to resize my box, but I want it to stay the same size, just bigger. I'm sorry, the same layout here in 2 lines, but just bigger. So what I'm going to do instead is hit the letter E, which if I hover right over here, that's my free transform tool. So now what I can do is click and drag, and it's going to make the whole thing bigger, the box and the fonts. Again, you'll see it skews it, so hold on the Shift key to make sure it doesn't skew it. I'll let go of the mouse first, and then I'll let go of the Shift key. And you can see my font is much bigger. So, all right, we're getting there. We're almost there. You're learning how to use the different tools here regarding type. What I want you to do now, if you're up for it, we're going to go up here to Type, Create Outlines. So Shift Command O. Now, before we do this, what I want to do is probably make a copy. So I've got my selection tool selected. I could have my type tool selected and just hit the Command key. Either way, make sure that arrow, you're showing that black arrow, and then hit the Alt key and you get the double arrow. I don't know if you can see that there. We got the black arrow and the white arrow next to it. Click and drag to the side. What that's going to do is make a copy, so we still have this editable text if we want to come back to this and make changes. But clicking on this copy we've got here on the main artboard, come to Type and click on Create Outlines, or you could just hit Shift Command O. Now what it does is it converts your type to shapes. It's no longer a font. And if we zoom in here, you see all these little blue dots. What are those things? Well, those are anchor points and paths. So if I hit the letter A and I get my direct selection tool, I can select just a few of these paths. And you notice the ones that are selected have solid blue. The ones that aren't selected have white in the middle there, okay? And I can click and drag. So now this gets really fun. Now I can really modify things and start making it exactly what I want it to do. So maybe I want my L or maybe the R over here. I can click and drag this down a little bit, and start making this my own and doing some really, really cool things to it. Maybe I want to highlight this T, drag it up, and maybe put a sail on there like a pirate ship or something. But you can see how all of a sudden it goes from being a font that you really can't do too much with to being custom shapes that you can do anything you can imagine with. We can even use the direct selection tool to select either any one of these individually and add color to it and separate out the colors. So it becomes a lot of fun when you can really go crazy with those outlines. All right, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. I'll just hit Command S to save. This isn't what I want to do for my for the look of things yet, but in the next lesson we're going to dive into shapes, colors, graphics, and artboards to create some of those images I showed you with that introduction. All right, here we go. All right, I don't want to get too far down the road playing with my typography yet till I know where my shapes and graphics are going to lie, because they need to work together. So in the previous video, we learned how to use the type tool and how to start getting fonts set in motion here. But what I want to do now is spend some time going over shapes, how to modify the colors, adding some separate graphics, and then making different artboards so we can have multiple comps. So right now what I'm going to do is just create a background. I'm going to hit the letter M to get my rectangle tool selected here. and hold down the space bar to drag up a little bit. And one thing I want to make sure you're seeing, I see these smart objects, or I'm sorry, these smart guides here. It's these little pink lines jumping up all over the place. And it's really helpful to let you know, are you lined up with something else on the canvas? In this case, I want to draw a rectangle to get my background from here down to the bottom. And I couldn't quite see the bottom, so I just let go. I can grab this anchor point and finish my sizing of that. But if you're not seeing those pink guides, go ahead and jump up here to view and make sure you've got smart guides turned on, and maybe even snap to point. That might help you out with your layout and getting things the way you want it. I'm going to go ahead and change this color. I want it to be more of a sea vibe here, so we're going to go for something more in the blue tone. And if you're not seeing this color window, again, go to your essentials. I'll just hit reset essentials, click on this little flyout menu, and then I see my color bars here. I can also click on this tiny little drop down menu and hit show options, which lets me refine my colors even further. I still have this color bar, the CMYK color spectrum, but I can come in here and add, let's say, just a little bit of black just to kind of darken it up a touch, maybe a little more cyan to make it a little more of a true blue. All right, there we go. Now in Illustrator, we have layers just like we do in Photoshop, but it works a little bit differently. Inside of each layer, we can have multiple layers. So we have this main layer here, and I can rename this anything I want to. But if I hit this little drop down, you can see every element within this layer. So I could create a brand new layer here and draw something else. And I can tell it's on a different layer because my guides, when it's selected, are a different color. So these are red. Anything in this layer, whether it's type or multiple shapes, let's change colors so you can see what's going on. All of these are in this layer, and you can see those objects directly here. I'm going to delete that whole layer, which deletes everything on that layer. The only reason why I showed you that is because you can have your entire project on one layer, which is a lot of times how I work. And the reason why, let me bring these back real quick. If I select this blue rectangle and I hit Command right bracket to try and bring this up as far as I can, that's the same as going to, let's see, where are we at? Object, Arrange, Bring Forward or Bring to Front. That's how you can change your stacking order. Well, it'll only go to the top of this layer. It'll never come all the way to the front. Well, a lot of times when I'm working in Illustrator, I'm creating logos or shapes or different things, and I want to work quickly. So rather than using multiple layers for what I do, and some people would advise against this, you can work with however you want. But I like to keep everything on one layer, and then that way I can quickly, so I've got this selected, I'm going to hit Command and the left bracket, it's the one right to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. So that left bracket key, Command left bracket, and you can see I can change it in the stack by hitting Command left or right bracket. It's a quick way, or Command Shift to throw it all the way to the bottom, so Command Shift left bracket or Command Shift right bracket. So again, I usually work in one layer so I can quickly change my stack and my layout here. All right, I'm going to bring my layers panel back down in here. I'm going to nest it back where it was. All right, so I've got my background selected here, and I'm okay with this color for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock this object, and the reason why is as I'm working with text, see right there, I was trying to grab that text and I accidentally selected the background instead and move the background. So I'm going to click on that once, hit Command 2 to lock it. That's the same as going to Object, Lock, Selection. Okay, and what that does is it makes it so I can't select anymore. It's like it doesn't even exist. That way I can focus on my typography and my poster and the text changes that I'm making. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I'm just going to move, let's see, I'm just going to move this over to the side. I already created, well, I didn't create, but I purchased a graphic for us to use. So I'm going to open that up. Feel free to open that up from the Assets folder. And they're just some vector illustrations here of anchors. Feel free to grab whichever one you want. I'm just going to grab this guy right here. I'll click once on it, Command C to copy it. I'll click back on that document we came from and hit Command V to paste it in there. And now I can click and drag to resize this. But you can see I'm having a hard time really even seeing it because there are so many anchor points. Like the entire thing looks blue. It's one big selection. It's really a brown anchor, but as I zoom out, you couldn't tell that because there's too many anchor points going on. So I'm going to hit Command H, Control H on a PC, and that's going to hide those anchor points. They're still there. My item's still selected. If I hover over it, you see I still have these bounding box around it selected. So I know that it's selected. It just hides all those points so I can really see the color I'm working with. Now what I'm going to do is hit the letter I from my eyedropper tool over here on the side. I'll click once on that blue color, and now it looks like it disappears, but really it's just the exact same color as the background. The reason why I did this is I want it to be in the same tonal range. I'm going to click once on this thumbnail, this fill here over on the side. I'm going to turn off only web colors because I want to be able to show any color I want here. And then I'm just going to lighten this up just a touch. So we're still kind of within the same color range. I'm just making it a touch lighter. Now I'll hit OK. So this looks pretty good. It's a nice subtle effect. It's a subtle anchor. And I want to make sure it's dead center. So I'm going to click once on this, making sure it's selected. In my options bar, I have this tiny little align to artboard button. If you don't see these alignment options, it's probably because it's set to align to selection. And since I don't have any other selections selected, I don't see them. So I'll click that drop down, click align to artboard, and now it's going to use my artboard as a reference to align this. So I'll click once on the horizontal align center, and I'll click once on the vertical align center. So now I know my object is directly centered in the canvas here. I'm going to zoom out just a touch to see it. I'm also going to jump over to that original typography poster I made just as a reference here to see where we're going with things. And you'll notice it's a little bit different. I flip-flop the colors. My background is currently lighter and my anchor is a little darker. So I'm going to jump back over here and scale this one up quite a bit to reflect what I had on that original design. Let's look at it one more time. That's close, pretty close. Okay, a smooth sea, never made a skillful sailor. So this one is a pretty straight design. I'm going to come back to this original editable text that we had. Command Shift right bracket to bring it all the way to the front. And let's see, a smooth sea. I'm going to click once right in there, hit return, never made. Click once behind the A, hit return, a skillful sailor. And now what I can do, actually I'm going to highlight all this, Command A to copy. Click over here, click once, Command V to paste. And the reason why is because as I start to scale this up, it's going to get all wonky on me here because it's going to hit those, and I don't know, this could be a cool effect too, but it's going to hit that bounding box and make things flow to new lines. I don't want to do that. I want it to stay exactly how I intended. So I'm going to hit Command Shift and the period key here to make it bigger, and it's not going to jump to 2 lines now because there is no bounding box. Now I'm going to hit Command Option and the down arrow key to adjust my leading here. Okay, let's take a look one more time. So not bad. That's about the way we went here. And what I'm going to do is drag this in place so the height of my font kind of matches center to that anchor there. Okay, and in the other version it was white, so what I can do is I can just come over here and either select this white box there, or I could have just used my slider to drag it up. Now one thing, if we look closely on this other one, you'll notice, let's take a look at that. What do we got going on? So I've got my font here, and let's look at my transparency window. So it's set at 100%. So what's going on here? I've got this anchor. Let's take a look at that. So my anchor is actually in front of my text here, creating that transparency effect. So what I can do, if you wanted to do that, we could bring the anchor in front, Command Shift right bracket, and see that's too much. I could bring the transparency down up here, or the opacity. Let's drop it to 50%. Now it's also going to make it a more subtle effect in the background, or I can put it back to 0 or at 100% here. Maybe bring my font to the front, and maybe I bring the opacity down on this a little bit. So you can play with that and get the desired effect you're going for. But I'm going to go ahead and stop right here on this setting just as is, like Command Save to make sure I save it. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to create multiple artboards, and we're going to look at creating multiple variations and then how to export it. All right, this is where we stopped in the last lesson. Now what we're going to do is create some more variations of this poster. We're going to work with artboards and how to export those artboards. We're also going to talk a little bit about bringing other graphics. In this case, we're going to bring in an image of the ocean. What we're going to end up with here are these couple other versions I made like this. So this one still has the anchor. I'm going to show you how to create these little waves down here. That will teach us how to use some of the shape builder tools. We're going to get some different fonts in here, and then we're also going to work with images. As you can see, you can work with images in Illustrator as well. So let's get started here. Let's go ahead and start working on this poster. So what I want to do, just for the sake of speeding this up, let's go ahead and hit, I'm just going to copy all this, Command C to copy, and I'm going to throw it up in my canvas. So this is, again, is like I showed you, we've got this whole big canvas to work with, and a lot of times I'll litter my artboard with stuff that I'm using as a reference. So this could have even been like an idea or a sample you got from somewhere else and you wanted to just paste it in here. And I'm going to move this guy out of the way that we ended up not using. And what I want to show you right now is the artboard tool. So right now, technically, we have this big old canvas, and then on the canvas, we can have multiple artboards. So this is an artboard that was 8.5 by 11. We set this up at the very beginning, hitting that preset button. So if I go to print this, only objects within this black, you see a black stroke there, anything within that will print on that 8.5 by 11. Everything beyond it will get cropped off. So in this case, let's say you wanted to see what that would look like. I can actually apply a mask to this. So this was locked, remember. I'm going to come over to Object, Unlock All, Command Option 2. So now I can select it. I'm going to hit Command C to copy it. Click once to the side, Command F to paste it in front. And I have two objects now. I'm just going to change color so you can see that. I just pasted it right in front, Command F. If I hit Command V, it's just going to throw it anywhere on the artboard that it feels like, but I want to put it right on top of that other one here. So now I've got two shapes. And now I'm going to shift click on that blue anchor. So I've got the blue anchor and this blue box in front of it selected. And I'm going to hit Command 7 to create a mask. And what that did is it actually pasted that shape inside of the other mask. If you want to get rid of it, you can right click and click Release Clipping Mask. Okay, but basically what I'm doing is I'm just cropping that. It's not a destructive crop though, so Command F to paste that shape I had in front. Shift click, Command 7. There we go. So I just trimmed it, and now it brought it in front of my text. So I'm gonna hit Command left bracket key to put it back behind that text. Okay, the whole reason for that was so you could see, okay, this is what it's gonna print like. But if you wanted to crop that off, you totally can using those shapes to mask. Okay, so let's get the artboard tool now. I'm going to hit Shift O. It's the same as clicking right here on that artboard tool icon. And now I can click and drag. Let's see this little toggle up here in my options bar. That's going to decide whether the artwork comes with me or if it stays by itself. So right now it's turned on. So if I hold down the Alt key and now drag to the right, and if I hold down the Shift key, it should keep it, there we go, in perfectly, no matter where my mouse goes up and down, it keeps it in line with the other artboard. Now if I let go, all of that artwork came with me. So this is a great way to build something once and then create multiple variations. Once I get this where I want, I can hit the Escape key to commit that there, and now I've got two artboards. And if I look over here in my, right next to my layers panel, I've got this artboards window. So now I actually have two artboards, and I can rename them. If I hit Shift O again to get my artboard tool, I'll click once on this artboard and I can see the name of it here called Artboard 1. Well, I could call this Comp 1. And I could click on this one and call it Comp 2. And the benefit to doing that is later down the road when we go to export this now, it'll use those names as part of the file name when we export it, saving us a step and also making it easy for your clients to see which version you're talking about as you're working with them. So I'm going to hit the Escape key to get out of that, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and let's look at what we're going to do here. So I'm going to grab this guy, move it down a little bit, and I'm again cheating because I've got this right next to me. If you wanted to, if you're on a PC, you can hit your print screen button to copy my screen. You can pause this video right here. On a Mac, I'm going to hit Command Shift and the number 4, and you could click and drag and then let go. So go ahead and pause the video, take a picture of my colors if you want to. And then when you let go of that, what it's going to do is it's going to throw that screenshot to your desktop. So if I click on my desktop, I've got a picture of my screen. So now what you could do is drag that picture to your desktop within Illustrator. And granted, it's just a picture. This isn't editable, but now you can use that eyedropper tool, hit the letter I, and you can sample from that photo to get the exact same color if you like the colors I'm working with here. You totally don't have to do that, but I do that a lot. I'll look online at different Google Images or whatever and find color schemes I like, bring in the photo, and then I can copy those colors. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work on changing first this background color. And again, if you don't see this, if it's locked, hit Command Option 2 to unlock that. I'm going to get my eyedropper tool with the letter I, and now I can click on any color and it'll change that background color. I'm going to hit Command Z because what it did, it actually filled the color of that shape in front of me. So now with that selected, if I click on that again, you see what it did. It just filled that mask layer. So what do? Well, I am going to, there's a few ways we can work. In this case, I'm just going to right click and release clipping mask for now because I don't want to deal with working around it. I'm going to click that layer, hit Command I, or no, not Command I, but the letter I, click once on that color, and now I'm going to click on the anchor, hit the letter I, and click once on that colored anchor in my document over here to get that color match. All right, what's going on? It doesn't look quite the same. Let's click over here and see. Okay, so my anchor inside of that artwork is actually set at a 30% opacity. So if I click once on this anchor and I set it to 30%, there we go. Now it looks a lot closer. In fact, it's an exact match. All right, this anchor is also centered, so I'm going to click once on this anchor here, and I'm going to click on that align to artboard, click on the horizontal align, and now it's centered. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is, let's look at how we made these waves. What I did, hit the letter M to get your rectangle tool, click and draw a rectangle, and then hit the letter L to get your ellipse tool. And I'm just going to change my color, mostly just so it's easier to see what we're doing here. Oops. Now I'll change my color, and that's deselected. And I'm going to hover right over the line here until I get the little smart guy that says path. I'll hold down the shift key, and then I'll click and drag, which will start a perfect circle. If I don't hold down the shift key, you can see it skews it. Hold down the shift key. Now hold down the alt key, and instead of dragging from the top, it'll drag out from the center since I'm holding shift and alt. So I get a circle here, and now I let go with the mouse and then let go of my modifier keys. I'll hold down command to change to my selection tool. Now I'll hold down alt to get my duplicator copy arrow. I'll start to click, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key. So now I've got my fingers on command, alt, shift, and the mouse. That way it drags a perfect copy and keeps it in line. Once I get it here, I'm going to let go of the mouse first, and now I let go of all three of those modifier keys. Now that I've done that once, all I have to do is hit Command D to duplicate that transform, or to step it multiple times. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these at once. Just use your command key, or click on your direct selection, or hit the letter V for that shortcut. Click and drag from outside to here, and then highlight all of those. Now I'm going to hit Shift M, and that's the shortcut for my shape builder tool. And what that does is it actually builds shapes. We could actually talk a lot about this tool, but what I want you to do is just hold down the alt key, and it's going to subtract those shapes. I could also click and drag through multiple, and I'm holding down the alt key to subtract them. If I wanted to, I could just click on it without any modifier keys, without the alt key, and it would add to that selection. It would actually add those together. So now that is one shape here, but I'm going to hit Command Z. I didn't want to do that. Hold down Alt, and now just click on these to cut this out. So now I've got that wave shape, and let's see, let's bring it over here to my document, about like that. And before I let go though, I'm just going to make sure there was nothing else I'm hiding. Okay, it was just that text. We'll bring this back up here, and that's good. And then let's work with the type a little bit. So we have a little bit of a font going on here. I'm using a font called Lato. So if I click on this one, so I can see Lato thin. So if you want to download that for yourself, go ahead and search for Lato, and you'll find latofonts.com. You can download right here. Click on that button. It'll throw a download zip file to your download stack. When you unzip it, I can see all of these fonts. So just go ahead and install these fonts on a Mac. Just select all of them, hit Command O to open them. It'll open up with Font Book, hit Install Font, and you should be good to go. Now, it'll probably give me an error because, yeah, I've already got it installed, so it's going to tell me it's a duplicate font. Are you sure you want to do it? And I'm going to cancel if it didn't already. But that is what you would do to get that new font to keep up with us here. And let's jump back over into Illustrator. Okay, so I'm just going to click once on this font here. In fact, I don't even need to try and type in the new font name. I can just hit my eyedropper tool and sample this font here. Now, obviously, I'm cheating a little bit because I've made this once, but just so you know, you can sample more than just colors with the eyedropper tool. You can actually sample the exact font size and styling. It looks a little different because this font was typed in all caps. So what I'm going to do is come up to Type, Change Case, and I'll put it to lowercase. And now it automatically changed all my type to lowercase. Okay, now something else though, I've got these as separate line items. So what I'm going to do, first I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to grab my text here, and I'll just bring it up here so I can work with it. So a smooth C I have as one line, so I'm going to get my type tool, highlight this, hit Command X to cut it. That cuts it to my clipboard. It copies it to my clipboard, but also cuts it from the line. I'll click once down here and hit Command V to paste it. Okay, so there's that. And then the word never, so I'll highlight that, Command C to copy, or Command X to cut it out of there and copy at the same time, Command V to paste. Now that's not the same size I want it to be, so I'm going to, here's another way to work. If this is selected and I click with the eyedropper tool, anything I click on will change that because that is still selected. I'm going to hit Command H to show that we had hidden those guides a while back. So you can see that that's still selected, so whatever I click on, it'll take either that color or that font style. But another way to work is with nothing selected, I can say, hey, apply this style. So I'll click once on the word never to anything I paste. So now if I hit Alt, you'll see my eyedropper tool turns from the fill eyedropper to the one that's already filled up. That's what that little black line, like it's filled up there, and I can deposit that look right onto that text. Now it doesn't look quite the same. I need to change, the one thing it doesn't come over is the capitalization. So I'm going to come down to type, change case, change it to uppercase. There we go. All right, and then made A is the next word I'm going to do. So what I did when I made this, I actually just clicked once on that letter, on that text, hit the Alt key, and drag down a copy, and change it to made A, and I can just type it in here, triple click, made A, and then skillful sailor, same thing, Alt click, drag down, Command Shift right bracket to bring it all the way to the front to make sure it's in front of those blue waves if you haven't already. And then I'll type in skillful sailor or skilled sailor. I've seen it both ways. All right, Command click on that, get the letter I from my eyedropper tool and click once over here, and now it's the same size and color, but I want it to be all capped. So I'll go to type, change case, uppercase. All right, now just a little bit of house cleaning to get this finished off here. I'm going to click on all of these, shift click to get multiple selections at once, and I want to align these to my artboard. Now my options bar has got so many things going on that the align bar got kind of hidden here, and if you don't see it here, you can also come up to window, down to align, and that'll actually pop open a separate alignment box here we can work with. So with all these selected, I'm going to click this tiny little drop down and make sure I've got my show options, and down here under align to, I want to make sure it's aligning to the artboard. Okay, so I'm just going to click once on the horizontal center. Now, because we're aligning to the artboard, it's going to use this as the reference. But let's say you've got a couple objects here and you wanted these to align. Let's say that left edge you wanted to align, but you didn't want to worry about the artboard itself. So you can shift click multiple objects and then take your finger off the shift button, click once on whichever object you want to be the one that it references. So let's say we want never to line up with the word, or with this sentence up top. So now I'll click, so I've got my selection tool, I don't have any fingers on the keyboard, and I'll click once there, and now you'll see it actually makes a thicker blue stroke around it. So that tells me this is my key object now. It's not the artboard. We're not aligning to the artboard, we're aligning to a key object. So now if I align the left edges here, it's going to nudge over the word never to line up there. Now you'll see that this font has a little bit of space built in. If I wanted it to truly line up perfectly, I could click once here, Command Shift O to create outlines. Remember that shortcut under type, create outlines. Same thing here, Command Shift O to create outlines. And the benefit to this is now it doesn't see all the excess type settings from the font, it only sees this as shape. So I can shift click this one more time, now click once more on that word, align the left edges, and now it's going to be a perfect alignment down that left side edge. So that's the benefit as far as working as a graphic image, but the downside now is that font is not editable if I needed to come back in and change it. So you can choose how you want to work there. I'm just going to shift click real quick on these, change my alignment to the artboard, and then I'm going to hit center align. Now they're all center align, good to go there. I'm going to just do a couple more little things here just to nudge these in place. You can see my smart guide's telling me that I'm balanced here. I can also shift click all three of these and now come back to my align panel, and I can distribute the vertical center. So if I click on this, it was still selected the artboard, so I'm going to hit Command Z, changes to selection. So now it's referencing just these three as a separate selection, and I'll horizontally distribute that. So now it's perfectly balanced between the spaces here. All right, so let's go ahead, and we've got that made. Make sure you're saving if you haven't already. I'm just going to delete that sample. I'm going to hit Shift O to get my artboard tool. Hold down the Alt key and drag another copy over. And hit Escape. Now in the next lesson, we're going to bring in these photos here and work with some photos. Alright, it's time to wrap up this project. We are going to create these last two versions where we've brought in a photo. So what we're going to do is jump back over to the document where we left off. We've got this third artboard that's just a copy here. I'm going to delete these waves because I don't need them. And that text now I can't see, so I'm just going to change the color to white so it doesn't get lost. And let's bring in the photo. In your assets folder, you should have this c.jpg photo. I'm just going to drag it right in here. Now, one thing I should talk about is when you bring the object in and you see this X through it, what that means is it's a linked graphic. So as long as your file stays in the same spot here, you won't have any problems. But let's say I move this up a level and I come back in, it's going to say some files are missing or modified, and it can't find it. So what that means is this is basically just a shell. It's referring to the original document here. So if you delete that, you're going to mess up your document. So a couple ways around that would be to go to your window, down to the links window, and here I can see that link I have. Click on this little drop down, and then we are looking for embed images right there. So click on that, and now that X goes away, and this image, although it is an image that's placed in here, it is now inside this document and will travel with this. So if you save it and then send it off to somebody else, this will still be there. All right, now that we've got that covered, let's go ahead and create our next version here. So we've got a smooth C, never made a sailor, made A at the top, and then skillful sailor at the bottom. And this image. So the way we're getting this graphic, we've got a couple things going on. We've got the image here as a hover. You can see those blue lines showing where the image is, but it's masked again behind another rectangle. So I've got the rectangle that's masking this image. If I double click in here, we can see my mask shape here, and I can actually change that mask. If I click back out, I change that mask. Double click back in here again, grab that corner, I can bring it back up. Or I can click one more time in there, and now I'm down inside of that linked file. You can see the path right here, the layer, the clip group, and then now the linked file. And I can move this around inside of that mask. If I double click back out here, and you'll see the image moved. So we're going to create the same thing over in our new document. All right, so let's go ahead and bring our picture over here. And it's in the way, so I'm going to throw it all the way to the background, Command-Shift, left bracket to put it all the way behind everything else. I'm going to click once on this shape, Command-C to copy it. And the reason why is I want to use this shape as part of the coloring, but I also want to use one of those shapes as a mask. So now I'll hit Command-F to paste it in front. I'm just going to change the color again so you can see I've got two shapes there. Shift-click on my graphic and hit Command-7 to make a clipping mask. So now I've got my picture, and below it I've got that the blue shape. So the way that we're getting the waves, if we look at this, it looks a lot different than what we're seeing here. We're seeing the straight up photo, but I want to change the coloring. So if I click on this once, I can see that I've actually got a blend mode, if we look under our transparency window, of soft light being applied to it. So what that's doing is it's interacting with the layer below it. So if I click on this once, come over to transparency, change it from normal to soft light, we should see everything behind it starting to show through. All right. Now that is great. If you want to, you can click through these different blend modes and see it has a much different feel to it depending on how it's interacting with the layer below it. Alright, so now let's address the layout here. So we've got a smooth C, never made A. I'm just going to copy this, Command-C to copy. And I'm going to throw this behind, Command-Shift left bracket to throw it all the way to the bottom. I'm going to click on this blue layer once, Command-Shift left bracket to throw it all the way to the bottom, and that way my anchor and text layers are above. I'm going to click once on this text layer, hit delete, and just delete this text in here so we can get things in place. Click once on this anchor, click on the white thumbnail here, and then again I can't see the color because I brought back those anchor points, but I can hit Command-H to turn that on or off. So if I hit Command-H to turn it off, I can see a reminder that opacity was set to 30%, so I'll put that back at 100%, so it's a white anchor again. Command-H to bring back my guides here, and then I'm just going to scale it down with my free transform tool. And then up here at the top, I'm going to click on my Align to Selection, change it to Align to Artboard so that these selections come back. There, now I know it's perfectly centered like we've got here. And I had copied this, so this is still on my clipboard. I'll come back over here and hit Command F to paste it in front, which will paste it right in the exact same spot as it was in reference to this artboard. I'll click once down here, Command C to copy. I'll come back over here, Command F to paste. Now, again, I'm kind of cheating because I'm not showing you how I set this up, but you get the point. You can kind of nudge these fonts around to make them the size you want. Here we can see this is Lato Thin at about 67 point, and you can just kind of play with those a little bit. I'm going to hit Shift-O, bring back my artboard tool, hold down the Alt key, click and drag to the right, and then hold down Shift to make sure it's in line here. And now for this last option, we have a very similar thing. The text is at the top. I'm going to Command C to copy that text, jump back over, delete these two versions, Command F to paste in front, so it's going to paste it right in line. And now we want to change what's going on here with this image. So if I click and drag to the right a little bit, we can see we've still got that blue layer down below, and it's locked right now. So if I go to Object, Unlock All, or Alt, Command 2, now I can click on it and see what's going on here. So this actually, if we click on it, I thought this blue layer was in front, or I'm sorry, this image layer is in front, but what's actually happening is this blue layer is on top, and it has a lighten blend mode being applied to get that coloring. So if I come back over to this image here, and let's move this over again just to remind ourselves. So in this image, I actually have this above, and it's got a soft light blend mode, but I want to put this back to normal, and then change this one. What was it again? Let's take a look. It's set to lighten. So I'll jump back over here, click once on that shape, change it to lighten. But you don't see anything happen. Well, that's because it's below the image we're trying to affect. So I'm going to click once on this guy, hit Command Shift, let's see, left bracket, the one right to the right of the letter P, to throw it all the way to the bottom of the stack. And now we can see this top blue layer is affecting the coloring here. So I'm just going to drag this back up, put it in line there, just to make sure it's actually truly in line. I'm going to make sure I align this to the artboard center and vertically. Zoom in a little bit. And now my anchor is still pretty big. Let's see what it did in that last version. I had it small. Oops. I had it small in the center, and I had this blue color. So I'm just going to copy that, Command C to copy. I'm going to delete this anchor for now, hit Command F to paste. And so you can see how you can quickly come up with a few different variations here. And now what we're going to do is export these artboards. So hit Command S to save. And now it's saved it, and I only named those first couple artboards. So in my artboards layer, let's see, I've got Shift-O, click once on there. So Comp 1, I'm going to drag this to the top of the stacking order, and this will be the order if you export a PDF that they'll come out as. I'll click once on this next one, that's Comp 2. I'll click once here, that's Comp 3. Oops. And then I'll click on this bottom one, that's Comp 4. And I have no idea where this extra artboard came in or how I did that at what point. So I've got two artboards, one stacked right on top of the other one. So sometimes it's good to check that out. I'm just going to delete that one. It won't affect anything. Okay, Comp 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, we can name these anything we want. Now when we go to export this, this is going to have the name Typography Poster 3, because this is the third time I've attempted to record this video for you. Anyway. And it's going to put that name in there, and then it's going to add Comp 1 or Comp 2 or Comp 3 or Comp 4 at the end of the file name. So let's give it a try. We'll come here to File, Export, and I'm going to go to Design Files, Files Sent, Comps, and we're going to change this format from PNG down to JPEG, and you see there's a lot of different file types we could use. I'm going to click on Use Artboards. So the difference is if I didn't click that, it would spit out everything that I have, including this white text here. So in fact, let's just do that real quick so you can see. I'll click Export. I'll leave it as CMYK. Resolution, I'll change this to 300 since we're going to print it, and I'll hit OK. And now if I jump over to those files sent, I see I have this JPEG, but if I open it up, it's a JPEG. This is exactly what I expected because I've done this before on accident many times. It exported any piece of artwork I had as one big JPEG. Sometimes that's helpful, and this is where, see where I cropped that initial anchor with a mask, and I didn't do this one. So, you know, maybe you want to crop these off if you're going to export it this way. like the waves. But if you let Illustrator do this for you, let's come back over here, go to File, Export, and we'll use artboards this time. We'll use all of the artboards and we'll stick them back into that file sent. I'm just going to change this from poster 3 just to poster. I'll hit export. So this is the name, Typography Poster. But when I export this, let's see what it does. And give it a second here. And we'll jump over to Finder. And now, look at these names. So it was Typography Poster, and then it added underscore comp1, comp2, comp3, and comp4. So this is a great way to quickly batch export your JPEGs. And notice it cropped off those waves and the anchors that were hanging past.